Biogen shares losing more than a quarter of their value this morning on news that research on its experimental drug for treating Alzheimer's is going to be halted. Joining us now to discuss, Geoff Porges. He is a senior biotech analyst and managing director at Leerink Partners. Geoff, I went back and looked at the chronology of this, and as recently as January, analysts were saying, you know what, they're not telling us anything about these. They're very mum on these phase 3 trials. And that might not be a great sign. I also saw another analyst say this is either going to be cold fusion or the holy grail. And then I've seen some people saying that they're more surprised that anyone thought it might work than that it doesn't work. What were you thinking about this drug for Alzheimer's?
Yes, we had this at a 30% probability of success, and we were particularly worried about the period from March until July. The street had become convinced that there would be a so-called interim analysis, and that the interim analysis offered the possibility of an early positive readout from the trials. But in fact, what they did and what we expected and had discussed with investors was that they would do a futility analysis, which is a different analysis. A futility analysis has downside, not upside, whereas an interim analysis has upside. And indeed, what they had was a futility analysis. The study was deemed futile by the group of experts who are monitoring the study, and that's why they've halted it. And this is probably the final blow, the final nail in the coffin, if you like, for the beta amyloid hypothesis for Alzheimer's.
Really? Oh, okay, that's what I was going to get to in a second. But is it worth $15 billion a market cap? Was the upside $15 billion in market cap for Biogen?
Well, certainly, look, if this had worked, most people, and I would agree with them, thought the stock would be worth well over $400 a share, and there was probably $30 to $50 of value in the stock, even with a discounted probability of success. Naturally, there's going to be an overreaction to this. A lot of investors will give up on this company. They're not in a very good position after this announcement. If you look at the rest of their business, they've got a mature MS business. They've got a rare disease neurology business with a drug called Spinraza. That's coming under competitive pressure. They've got a great royalty stream from Roche, but that's coming under competitive pressure. So it sort of looks like increasing like a value trap. And the next few months are going to be very telling. This company will probably have to be substantially restructured as a result of this.
The entire pharmaceutical biotech industry has a maturity problem. What is the problem that we can't use our basic science discoveries to figure these horrific things out? And my other question, at least a couple of years ago, I had great doubts that dealing with the beta amyloid plaques was going to result in anything. Why were people still holding on to that notion that was the key thing? And I mean, it's got something to do with Alzheimer's, but is it a result of the disease, or is it the cause of the disease, the plaques?
Well, it might just be saying that we're going to treat the scar in the injury,
right.
which in fact is part of the body's response to the insult.
Yeah, you're treating the scar of an injury instead of the injury.
Yes,
makes sense.
That's exactly right. Maybe we're treating the fever rather than the underlying infection. It's very difficult in diseases of the brain to know what's a bystander biological process and what's the causative process. And it increasingly looks as though beta amyloid is a bystander process. It's there, but it's not necessarily the key culprit. The question about why people continue to believe, Biogen had a intriguing phase 1/2 study called the PRIME study. On the basis of that PRIME study, which was a few hundred patients, they were like a poker player and put all their chips on the table at one time, made this huge bet on these two large pivotal trials. In fact, they'd recently added a third pivotal trial that they announced they were going to conduct in even earlier Alzheimer's patients. And all of that's basically on hold, or if you like, discontinued now. It's a pretty good example of how an entire organization can start to believe their own Kool-Aid. But you're right, many of us in the investment community have become increasingly skeptical. You see Lilly fail, Pfizer fail, Merck fail, many other companies step away from beta amyloid, and then Biogen and Eisai, their partner, were the last holdouts. Well, they're not going to be holding out any longer.